All right, everybody, welcome to the show. Thursday, November 14th. The sun is already down. It's pitch black outside at 5:55. I do have to say, I will just be transparent and put this out front right now. This is my Super Bowl. Super excited to introduce our guest this week. Our guest wearing a Virginia Tech logo is David Wright, hailing from Norfolk, Virginia, a Hickory High School alum. David is one of the best and most beloved New York Mets of all time. In his 14 seasons with the franchise, it's right there. He won 2 Gold Gloves, 2 Silver Sluggers, a 7-time All-Star, and broke countless franchise records for the Mets, including hits and RBIs. He also was captain of Team USA in the 2013 World Baseball Classic and earned the name Captain America, where he led the tournament with 10 RBIs and a .438 batting average. David Wright, welcome to the Sons of Saturday.
What a hype, man. I could take you on the road with me and, you can introduce me every day.
I mean, you even got the row back on. Like, you're doing our jobs for us.
Yeah, I just saw the discount code here. I'm going to have to jot that thing down because I'm a big rowback fan. I love golf.
Just tell everybody, David.
So I wear golfing, any chance I get.
Tell everybody, David, for 20% off, just use code SUNSVT with Rowback. We got to send you a gift basket. We'll get Shaylin on that and get you some down there.
I appreciate that.
So as every podcast begins, Pete McGee, he submitted a Hokie haiku. This one is for this episode. Metropolitans, David devastates baseballs, a friend to gobblers.
Wow. There we go. All right.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Nice. Very nice.
So, David, for those unfamiliar, obviously you have the Virginia connection, but what other connections does your family have to Virginia Tech?
So, as Billy Ray caught me midstream in the bathroom at Layton Stadium and introduced himself, we were there for my youngest brother, Daniel, his bachelor party. He's getting married in the Outer Banks of North Carolina the weekend before Thanksgiving. So my brothers and I and some friends were there on his bachelor party, watching the Hokie. So I have 3 brothers, 2 of which went to Virginia Tech. The other one went to JMU. My 2 brothers that went to Virginia Tech probably spent a combined 16 years in Blacksburg, finishing up the degree. So I used to go more often. I don't go as much as I'd like, so it brought back a lot of good memories being at Lane Stadium and in Blacksburg this last weekend.
And what kind of impact has Virginia Tech had on you over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, I was in high school during the Michael Vick era. So how, Michael Vick going out there and almost playing like a video game, how could you not tune in and root for the Hokies? And then when I was in New York, actually, one of the things that stayed with me the majority of my career, I'm trying to do the years in my head right now, was David Wilson was drafted by the Giants. I'm a Giants guy, so I had a signed David Wilson Giant Hokie helmet in my locker in New York. So, there's a lot of kind of parallels, and I love when those types of worlds combine where, one of my New York teams drafts a Hokie and I get a chance to meet them and exchange jerseys.
It's so funny you mentioned that because my dad sent me when I was at Tech, he sent me like a screenshot of you talking to Gelbs or somebody, and it had the Virginia Tech helmet in the background. And I was like, where did he get that? That's funny that's the story, is you got it from David Wilson.
Yes. And I had a Tyrod Taylor jersey at one point in my locker. So I represented as much as I could.
David Wilson, we got David Wilson, David Wright. David Wilson is probably one of a top 3 podcasts we've ever done. That one went absolutely off the rails, as you might imagine.
Yes.
Love David Wilson. So now, David, I know you were in California at one point. Are you still there? Where are you calling in from tonight?
Yeah, Southern California. Married a Southern California girl, so that's home for us now.
Are you down in the San Diego area? You used to be in Crown Point?
Manhattan Beach. So
okay. I got you.
Yep.
So I wanted to take this podcast in a little bit of a different direction. We could talk about the moments for the Mets for hours. I would sure love to do it. But I'm sure you're asked those questions a ton and you can find those answers anywhere. So I'll give you just this one on this topic. What is the favorite moment in your Mets career on the diamond and off the diamond?
I mean, that's such a generic question. I think you could do better than that. I mean, I think my favorite, it's got to be the World Series. You know, I was lucky enough to, and it was towards the tail end of my career, and I was hanging on physically by a thread with my back. You know, so getting a chance to experience the World Series, hitting a home run in Game 3, you know, that by far is the highlight of my career. I would say, you know, being named captain, there's not too many captains in baseball. Being named captain of the franchise has got to be up there. And then as far as off the field, President George W. Bush was a big baseball fan, is a big baseball fan. And he used to invite a group of baseball players to the White House each winter. And I was lucky enough to get the invite. I believe it was after the winter of 2006 or 2007, one of the two. And got a chance to bring my dad to the White House, sit down for dinner with, I think it was me, Lou Piniella, Vernon Wells, Trevor Hoffman. And I think that was the group at the White House having dinner with the president and the first lady.
It's incredible. I know you had a lot of great teammates, great coaches, but over your time with the Mets, who are some of the people that may not have been recognized, you know, that, you know, had a super large impact on you in your time in New York?
Well, first and foremost, it was my family. You know, I mentioned my 3 brothers, and I don't think that I have that ultra competitive attitude and desire to win without growing up with 4 boys in the household. I mean, we'd break it up to where it was me and the youngest versus the 2 middles. And whether it was basketball or ping pong or eating contests, you know, that will to win was in all of us. And I think it taught me how to compete at such a young age. And then you sprinkle in on top of that, my mom working in the school system, my dad being a police officer, you know, it kind of brought everything together as like the ultimate competitive family, but kind of that working blue collar attitude to where, you know, if you see me, I'm 6 foot, I'm 200 pounds. There's nothing, I don't run very fast. I don't jump very high. I'm not the strongest guy, but my will to compete and my will to work harder than everybody else, I think was one of the reasons that I was able to be somewhat successful at the major league level. And I think that credit goes to my family, some of the youth coaches I got really lucky with in the Tidewater area, the 757, having some coaches that really took me under their wing and showed me how to play the game.
So you mentioned your will to win and also your relationship with David Wilson. And for a lot of people, they may not know this, but David Wilson and yourself, you had the exact same diagnosis that cut both of your careers short with spinal stenosis. And this is something that we've seen across sports: Peyton Manning, Sterling Sharp, Michael Irvin. So one of the things that I remember toward the tail end of your career was literally 3 hours of warming up every single day just to get on the field and just to compete. So can you walk me through a little bit like what that routine was like and what was the motivating factor of you to do that every single day? It's easy to say like I'm doing it for my teammates, but every single day for 3 hours to warm up to play 9 innings was a massive undertaking. So just wanted to learn a little bit more about that.
Right. Well, you mentioned my career. I got very fortunate where I got, you know, whatever it was, 12 or 13 years before, you know, that really started becoming the beginning of the end for me. You know, a guy like David Wilson didn't get that opportunity. So, you know, your heart goes out to the, you know, the guys that spend their and girls that spend their whole lives working towards a goal. They start to accomplish that goal, then it gets taken away from them for a reason that's kind of beyond their control. But for me, I got into a collision with Carlos Lee, who's about twice my size, fractured a vertebrae, and lo and behold, I tried to play through it for about a month and a half, and it got worse and worse, and ultimately led to you know, the condition that, you know, became too much to play through, the spinal stenosis and the discs issues and the you know, the bone spurs and things like that. But you know, I mean, it's something that for me as a young kid, that's all I knew, and that's what I loved doing, was playing baseball. So, you know, the minute that somebody says, hey, you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z, and I didn't care how many hours it took, and I didn't care what it was, I was going to do it to try to get back on the field, because you have that desire to go out there and compete, and that desire to continue to do something you love. And, was it a pain? And were there some days where it's like, man, I don't know if I feel like doing this? Of course, but you push through it, especially in that 2015 season. Cause, I'm sitting there doing my rehab. I'm watching TV when I'm not in town with the guys doing my rehab. I'm watching the TV and I'm seeing the guys play well and keeping their heads above water and trying to make that playoff push. So that motivated me even more to, do those double days of rehab and make sure you put the work in to get back out with those guys to grind towards the end of the season and try to get that playoff spot.
So I medically, similar situation. I medically retired from football my junior year, and 100% true. You had an awesome long career. David Wilson, literally as soon as he gets in the league, he's returning kicks for touchdowns, and it's unfortunate how that worked out. But I'm curious how you frame, or where do you place your baseball career in your life's overall journey as you look at everything? You played baseball ever since you were a kid, and for almost every single athlete, they don't get to pick the picturesque, like, this is when my sports career is over. So what was that transition like into the next phase of your life?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, let's see, my oldest daughter is 8 years old. So I didn't go to college, so I'm trying to do the math. So for 34 years of my life, baseball is by far the most important thing, to me. The birth of my first daughter, I got 3 kids, that obviously changes, your perspective. You hear it all the time on things. And, my wife would kill me if I didn't say, our wedding is probably pretty important as well. But, I think that once you start having children, and now, I'm lucky where a lot of guys, they have kids in the middle of their careers and they don't get a chance to see their son or their daughter's first step or their first T-ball game or their take them to school on the first day of school. I got a chance to do all of that, post baseball, which I'm very, very thankful for. And now I tell each kid that I'll coach one of their sports. So my oldest one wants me to coach her soccer team. My middle one, I coach her softball team. My youngest one's my boy, I coach his baseball team. So, being there for those moments, looking back on it, obviously is the most important thing that I'll ever do in my life, and getting a chance to raise them up to be, like my dad raised my brothers and I, that obviously is goal number one in my life right now.
Yeah, I know Billy Ray and I, being from North Jersey, 9/11 had a big impact on us and our hometowns, and know that you've gotten involved with Battle of the Badges between the FDNY and the NYPD. Would love to hear about, how that, a little bit more about that cause and how that personally has impacted you.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. I mark that date in the calendar each year. For those that don't know, Battle of the Badges is a charity baseball game between the New York Police Department and the Fire Department in New York. And it's not this slow pitch softball, beer league game where everybody's patting each other on the back. It is intense. And if you Google the hockey game that they do, you'll see that they have, brawls on the ice, and it doesn't quite get to that point on the baseball field at Citi Field, but it comes close. Like, I go from dugout to dugout, and I try to, I'll put the fire department hat on, then I'll go over to the police department, put the police department hat on, and the trash talk between dugouts is elite. I mean, I've never heard anything like it. I wish baseball, I imagine it's kind of like football where you get a little, the trash talk elevates a little bit, but baseball, we don't really do that too much. I wish we would. And if we end up going the trash talk route, we could take a lot of notes from the police officers and the firefighters in New York on how to start off the trash talk, because it's good baseball. They're really good guys. We raise a lot of money for causes that the police and the fire department pick. And it's just a fun night all in all. So it's one of those nights where I circle it in my calendar, and I can't wait for it.
We'll certainly appreciate everything that you've done for the city of New York, everything surrounding, and Virginia Tech as well after 2007. We're moving into the rapid fire segment, and I'm going to add this one because I just thought about it. What was the angriest you have ever been on a televised baseball game that you've played? Now, the moment that comes to mind is the Miami Marlins game where you kept the tag on and he came off the bag. But what is the angriest moment of your career?
So that was, the umpire was McClellan, and that was my guy. So I couldn't get too mad.
He gave you some leash too. I mean, most other people.
Yeah, he did. And Terry was out there quick to kind of have my back because he could see the fume, the smoke coming out of my ears. The funny thing is I can't pinpoint the most angry I've probably been is something where I didn't get the job done, like, struck out with the bases loaded, something along those lines. But the funny part is, to the day that I retired, I probably got ejected, I don't know, let's call it 4 or 5 times. I would have a voicemail or a text message from my dad when I got back to the clubhouse, like saying how disappointed he was in me. And I'm a grown man at this point, and, like married, family. And I got my dad yelling at me on the other end of the phone, telling me that I got to clean up my act and be more respectful towards the umpires, which I agree with. But you get caught up in the heat of the moment. You can't help yourself. But, looking back on it, some of the ejections were entertaining, and I can't imagine what was going through my mind at the time.
So this is the hardest one. If you could have dinner with 4 people, dead or alive, I'm gonna save you any internal beef here. You can't say family, but 4 people, dead or alive, who's coming to dinner?
Oh man, I mean that's not gonna be too rapid fire. I would go with, like I said, I'm a big golf guy now, so I'd love to pick the brain of like a Tiger Woods or an Arnold Palmer or Jack Nicklaus. I love like history and government. So, I'd take a historical figure, whether it's like a George Washington or a Abraham Lincoln or even like a Ronald Reagan, something like that. And then I'd probably go with the 4th is going to be tough. I'd probably go like some sort of historical baseball player, just because I love the history of the game as well. So like a Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle type. So it would take a little longer to think of the exact 4 or 3, but that's where my mind's at.
Yeah, we got to stop labeling this as rapid fire, because
I know I'm taking way too long. I apologize.
No, we got to stop calling it that, because you can't ask a question.
Your questions are like thinking man's questions. So it's not like like 4 people from the history of ever to go to dinner with. That's not, I don't have that one on the tip of my tongue.
I will say David Wright just came on the podcast and said this is a thinking man's podcast. I might have to add that to the LinkedIn. So this one, I'm curious, what is the best tech game that you've attended, or how many have you been to? I mean, we've seen you at a couple. Like, what's the best that you've attended?
I feel like I'm bad luck, because the 2, other than the Clemson loss last weekend, we were talking about it before we started filming, is I was at the Matt Ryan Boston College game in the rain. Oh, no. And I mean, it's just like, at some point I'm going to stop getting invited back for sure, because I feel like every time I'm there, I was for my 30th birthday. I mean, that was 12 years ago. I was at Virginia Tech, Virginia, when it was kind of like a field possession game, freezing cold, and we won that game. So I've definitely been to more losses than wins. Let's say that. So hopefully I keep getting invited back.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. I have been to 56 Virginia Tech games, and my record is 20. I think it's 27 and 26 and 20. Whatever the math is, that works out to being 500. Clemson bumped me back down to 500. So
yeah, but I feel like 500 is better than what my record is. So at least you got that going for you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to all the games. I mean, I'd like to be better than 500.
That's a good point.
Oh man, yeah. Well, David, I am going to the Duke game. Not this weekend, next weekend for my 30th birthday. So, hoping we can turn the tides here, because it's been a tough year. Our next question was, what was the biggest heartbreak tech game you have attended? I think we can answer that.
Matt Ryan. To this day, when I see Matt Ryan, it just like makes me want to throw up. Because I remember it. Like the game was like, I feel like the game was over. Like we're celebrating. And it was misty and it was kind of nasty out. And, then he just led those drives, and it was just wild. So to this day, like I couldn't root for the Falcons because of him. And every time I see him on TV, it's like I get this like churning sensation in my stomach.
It's pretty funny. Pat made the comparison to Klubnik's pocket escape pass to the Matt Ryan touchdown. It's the same end zone. It's the same busted coverage. It's the same corner of the end zone, similar score. Same heartbreak.
Tough.
David, if you didn't play baseball, what would you have played?
Like sport-wise or just in general, like
Sport-wise.
making a living? God, I don't know. Like I loved all the sports. I learned at an early age. The Tidewater area turns out some pretty good football players. My first year of tackle football, I realized that wasn't for me. Not necessarily a contact sport type guy. And it didn't take long for me to learn that. Basketball, I did like the little things. Basically got my ankle broke my freshman year of high school getting dunked on. So realized quickly that wasn't for me either.
Hope you buried that film.
So it's probably baseball or bust, to be honest with you. I love, as I mentioned before, I love golf now. So, I guess my fallback would have been golf.
I don't know if we've ever gotten the answer to this question, but I got a DM from a listener.
Yep.
His name's Pat. And he said, what is the situation with the high socks for day games and the low socks for night games? Is that like a superstition thing? Like what came from that?
I think early on, when you get to the big leagues, it's like a whole different ball game. Everybody talks about the paychecks, and obviously those are great, but some of the cool stuff is like the gear you get and the uniforms and just all the cool free stuff. And one of those things is when you get to the big leagues, you get all these sets of uniforms and you get like the long pants and they're all custom fitted, like tailored, like the way you want them, this and that. And they were like, do you want shorties? And I was like, what do you mean shorties? And they're like, some guys wear the short pants, so they got them tailored with the short pants. So I was like, man, this is awesome. I'm not going to let these just go hanging in my locker and go to waste. So I was like, I'll wear them one day game. And I think I got a couple hits and I was like, okay, so now we're going to go long pants for the night games and the shorties for the day games. So that I think I stayed true to that for my entire career. The tricky ones are the 4:00 games. Like we used to have Fox games on whatever it was, Saturday, that are 4:00, and it's dead set in the middle of day and night. So then I made a deal that if we did ESPN, the night game on Sunday, I'd obviously go long. But if we'd had the 4:00 Fox games on Saturday, I'd go short. So that ended up being the little give and take.
So you don't sound like a superstitious guy at all. So you don't have any other superstitions outside of that you did on game day?
I think to this day, I pretty much eat a peanut butter and banana sandwich every day. And that's what I ate before every game.
Question. Were you more of did you love the defensive plays more or did you love the hits more? What did you love more?
Hitting. Defense is like the anxiety levels through the roof because, hitting, it's so individual. And granted, you need a bunch of good individuals to have a good team, but defense, you could legitimately cost, the pitcher or somebody like, it'll affect their stat line and their game. So the anxiety level for me on defense always outweighed the anxiety level that I had at the plate. I always felt like hitting came a little more natural to me. Defense always took a lot of work, and it's something that I took a lot of pride in. I'd like to think that I came up as a very average defender, and I turned myself into at least for me, I reached a ceiling to where I thought I was a pretty good defender. So I was always very proud about that. But if you had to ask, would I rather have a bat in my hand with the game on the line or a glove on my hand with the game on the line? I'll take the bat every time.
So David, I have been making a handful of trips up to New York lately. Okay. There is a special someone who lives in the East Village. Can you describe your love of the New York metropolitan area for the listeners?
Oh man, it's for somebody that hasn't been there. It's kind of like, to me, trying to explain it to a Virginia Tech fan is think about Enter Sandman all the time. Like the energy level of New York and their excitement.
That is an awesome comp.
And their excitement for sports is like how excited that I got last weekend when Enter Sandman kicked on. So, it's just the energy and the electricity of the city and the love that they have for their sports is unmatched. It's the greatest stage to perform. And now with that, you're always under a microscope, whether it's performance-wise or off the field. But the perks that you get for winning, playing well in New York are amazing. amazing. And that was one of the things that it took a while to get used to, were people recognizing you walking down the streets, or, coming up to you and just telling you good game, or coming up to you and telling you, that you suck and that you should try this at the plate. So it took a little while to get used to, but there's no greater place to perform than New York.
Well, yeah, there was an 100% chance of. I remembered I'm walking down the concourse and you step in there. I said, no, that can't be David Wright. And I just hit you with it, David, and you go, yeah. So you when you're in Blacksburg, are you pretty low key? I feel like baseball and golf, you can kind of just fly under the radar a little bit.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in my mind, I feel like I'm very good looking, but when I look in the mirror, I think I'm very average looking. So I feel like I can fit in. But yeah, there's a lot of, it was strange because in Blacksburg, or at least last weekend, maybe that there's more families coming from the Northeast or the New York area going to school in Blacksburg. But yeah, there was a lot of Mets fans, and there was some Mets hats and some Mets gear being worn around. So I thought it was really cool, seeing the love for the Mets at a place that obviously I love going to hang out and watching football.
So you brought up Enter Sandman, which makes me think of May 19th when you hit a walk-off single against Mariano Rivera. Mm-hmm. And we've debated this a couple of times, and I think you can be the best person to answer this. What's more intimidating? Enter Sandman in Lane Stadium or Enter Sandman in Yankee Stadium with Mariano Rivera taking the mound?
So Mariano's the best to ever do it. But when I think of Enter Sandman, and this is no knock on Mariano, but I played with Billy Wagner, who also came out to Enter Sandman. And you want to talk about like hype is Billy Wagner coming in like in 06. We clinched the division, and Billy Wagner coming out to Enter Sandman, for a Sunday night game, and the place is rocking, or the playoffs. And that's really, really neat. But like, I was like everybody else at Lane, like when you get the Let's Go Hokies chant followed by Enter Sandman, and the whole place is singing the last couple verses of Enter Sandman. It is like chills down your spine. I got it on my phone. I started sending it out. I get no service at Lane Stadium, so I'm trying to send it out to all my friends and family. And I felt like I was back playing again after hearing Enter Sandman. So to answer your question, I was pretty jacked up with the Lane Stadium Enter Sandman, but you never really wanted to hear it against you when Mariano coming in, and you always wanted to hear it when Billy was coming in. In 2006, 2007.
So speaking of music, I'm sure plenty of opportunities when you lived in New York and now out in LA, but what was the best concert that you've ever been to?
Man, best concert. See, I'm back like in high school, I got a chance to go to Goo Goo Dolls, and I thought Goo Goo Dolls was amazing. I'm now more of a country guy. So like Jason Aldean, Kenny Chesney, I'm still waiting to try to go to a Morgan Wallen concert at some point. Those are the ones that kind of stick out to me. Dave Matthews is always a great time. Yeah. Being a Virginia guy. Kind of the one that sticks out for me, it probably was one of my first concerts, but Goo Goo Dolls in high school was at the Virginia Beach Amphitheater was pretty special.
And some more Virginia Beach lore questions. Brett Smith asked, what was your best memory as a Norfolk Tide?
Man, I think just being a Norfolk Tide. I mean, I told you my dad was a police officer in Norfolk. So he had some coworkers that I think would earn a couple extra dollars doing security at the Norfolk Tide games. So we'd go to the games, and his buddies would get me a foul ball or introduce me to one of the players. And I got the biggest kick out of taking a picture, with a guy, watching him play, then turning on the TV next week and seeing him in a New York Met uniform. So, and getting a chance to be on the other side of that fence, wearing the Norfolk Tide jersey and just reminiscing about all the times I had there as a kid, and now coming full circle and playing in front of my friends and family and kids wanting my autograph. Was pretty surreal. So that was it was actually a good stepping stone for me on my way to New York because it taught me how to manage my time, how to deal with the local media, how to properly prepare for a game while getting pulled in a bunch of different directions. So I'm very thankful for that month because I think it taught me a lot.
We used to go down to the Outer Banks from New
Yeah.
Jersey every summer, and we would stop in Norfolk like the night before.
Yeah, you guys cause all the traffic. Like we live right on the road, the one road in and out, and all you guys from the Northeast would cause all the traffic for us locals having to go to school or having to try to go get groceries and stuff like that. So, you guys.
We were getting you ready for it. You're welcome.
Yes.
Prepping him for New York. And then walk me through a perfect weekend out with the fellas in Virginia Beach.
Oh man. Well, right now it's for sure at my age, it's a round of golf at Bayville in Virginia Beach, followed by probably a nice dinner. My go-to spot there is a place called Zoe's in Virginia Beach. So that's probably different than it was 20 years ago, but that's kind of my go-to now is a nice round of golf followed by a nice dinner.
So last segment here, we're gonna give some fan submitted questions. The first one is from my guy Rich Luttenberger, and he had pretty straightforward.
Okay.
He just says, David, why can't Major League Baseball players bunt?
Why can't they bunt?
Why can't they bunt?
Okay, so what you said his name was Rich?
Yes.
All right, let's give Rich a bat and let's crank up the pitching machine to 100 and have him go put his face right next to the bat and have him softly make contact with the 100-mile-an-hour fastball and make it go in fair territory and see if he changes his question or changes his tune. There's no way. If you told me right now that however much like you go face, I don't know, you name it, and you have to get a bunt down, and my life was on the line, I'd say goodbye because that I think that's incredibly difficult.
There it is. But the answer is bunting is hard.
Right.
Not a question, but a story. My teammate at Tech, he said, Trent Young, he says, cool story about David being a Hokie fan. When I was 12 years old in Florida, I was at spring training after the Mets were signing autographs to the fence. David Wright was the one guy I wanted an autograph from, and the line was extremely long. So Mr. Young yells out, how about one for the Hokies? David looked around. My dad yelled it again and said, where are you guys? And then moved him up to the front, gave him his autograph. So he did want to say thank you for that in Port St. Lucie.
Oh, appreciate you. Thank you. That's all you got to do.
Rich did have one more. Here's an opportunity for him to redeem himself.
Okay, let's go.
If you could eliminate any more of the recent rule changes, which one would you get rid of and why? And then more pointedly, what do you think about this? Should the shift be banned or not?
I mean, the shift never bothered me because like my bat speed was to right field anyway. Like I didn't have the best bat speed. So I naturally went to right field. That's one of the things where if I forget bunting, if I had to work on something and I was a hitter, well, I guess they don't shift anymore, but during the shift, I would have worked on just like going the other way. Cause the way to beat the shift, you go the other way, they stop shifting you. Then that opens up that hole again. I like the new rule changes. Especially the pitch clock. I think it's more entertaining. Sitting through a game is much more enjoyable with the constant action. Some of the rule changes are still like, I hate the rule. First of all, I hate the universal DH. I think I'm more old school where I love the ins and outs and a manager really making a difference with the double switching and do you leave the pitcher in or do you hit for him? That's one of the things that I don't like. And I also don't like kind of the goofy runner on second base to start extra innings rule. I think that's a little ridiculous, but for the most part, I think they're doing a great job in getting the younger generation interested because it speeds up the game and it keeps people's attention throughout the course of the game with the pitch clock and making sure there's more action.
It is easy to say, though, as a New York Met, that we loved having pitchers bat because we had some unbelievable pitchers that would take that bat.
Like one of my closest friends, Jacob deGrom. I mean, he maybe should have been hitting further up in our lineup. I'm not sure if that's like good or bad. You can make a joke with it regardless, but he could handle the bat. And we truly worked on that with Terry Collins. we truly worked on, like, they thought it was such an advantage. The coaching staff thought it was such an advantage for us having the athletes that we had pitching. And then on top of that, then you miss out on the Bartolo Colon home runs, like how epic was that? So yeah, I kind of missed the pitchers hitting.
I'm really glad the Bartolo Colon home runs were mentioned here.
Yes.
All right, we got Thanksgiving coming around the corner. We got Christmas coming around the corner. First question: when is it appropriate to start playing Christmas music in the Wright household? And second question: if you had to fill a Thanksgiving dinner table by picking 5 former teammates, who would they be?
All right, the first one was I already got on my wife, because at one point we had Halloween lights, Christmas lights, and Thanksgiving decorations on our house at the same time. So I thought that was crazy.
At the beach, no less.
So that was a point of contention lately. The Thanksgiving table, that's a good one. I'd start with my guy Cliff Floyd. That was like my guy. Joe McEwing, also back in the day. I'll try to go like a couple from each era. I got to get my guy Jose Reyes. Not sure he's a big turkey fan, but we'll figure something out for him. Jacob deGrom, for sure. How many is that? I got 2, 4.
You got 1 more.
You got 1 more. You know who and rest in peace, but I loved spending time with Tom Seaver. He wasn't a teammate, but he took me under his wing when I was a younger player, and I loved talking shop with him. So I'm gonna go Tom Seaver for the win.
Legend.
So last few here, because I know you got to get to. I don't know when you guys do dinner. It is 3 o'clock, but I know we got to get you out of here. So
kids practices, dinner. I'm trying to think of what else we got. Well, my wife tells me it's a school fundraiser, like shopping event, which I think is complete nonsense. She just wants to go shopping, but a day in the life.
This is actually an awesome one. This is an NIL related question. So Steven Sawpaw, we went to high school together. He's a Mets season ticket holder with his brother Michael, who actually was my history teacher, which was a brutal assignment. So he says that your ad for the A2K DW5 glove was the first time in his life ever that an ad influenced him to buy something. I'm gonna change that. He probably got his parents to buy it, right. But we see this a lot in basketball with signature shoes. Like, what was the courtship with Wilson like for that, and how much input did you have on the actual product?
So I had 100% input, and wow. I became a kind of equipment free agent early on in my career. And the way that I picked out my glove was that I had all of the major glove companies send me a glove. And that winter I broke them in, I felt them, I walked around the house with them, I played catch with them. And I went with the one that felt most comfortable for me because, as I told you before, I felt like I was, especially in the minor leagues and especially my first few years in the big leagues, a very average defender. So, I certainly wasn't going to take a few extra dollars and have inferior equipment. I wanted something that I felt comfortable with at third base. So I spent all winter walking around, breaking in these different gloves, having my brothers or whoever go out and play catch with me and just trying to feel it. And for me, Wilson was top of the line. And to this day, like, my 4-year-old son, that's, I pushed that on him. I'm like, dude, you don't know this yet, but this is the best quality stuff. So this is what you're going to use. And I don't care if you like it or not, but I've done the research and this is it. This is what you're going to use. So, that's how I came about that. But I had 100% input on designing my glove. And the same goes with my bats. I used a couple years I used Marucci, and a couple years I used Louisville Slugger. And I would go to the facility, and it's actually really cool, especially in Louisville and Kentucky for the Louisville Slugger plant. But I mean, they plug it into a computer system and you see like the thing shave and grind your bat and it pops out, and I'd feel it. And I'm like, man, can you make the handle a little bit thinner? And they do a couple calculations in the computer and they spit out another one and feel that one. I'm like, can you make it a little, this way? And they kept doing it until it was something I felt comfortable with, which I thought was really, really cool. So, yeah, I had a lot of input on the equipment that I used.
And just an aside for any of you that need some advice, take the David Wright route of the vitamin water. If you need to look that up, go ahead and look up the vitamin water David Wright deal. Very well done, David, there. Very headsy play there.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Last two from the fans. My mother says, your pops coached in Little League. What was the biggest lesson he instilled in you as a player?
I think just that blue collar. Like I got my Bud Foster. Yeah, see, hold on one second. So this is,
there we go.
You see that? So, So I think just that like kind of blue collar, lunch pail style attitude where, I remember playing in the big leagues, and for whatever reason, there's two moments that kind of hit me where it's like, you made it moments. Was one against Randy Johnson, and two was against Barry Bonds. And I remember, I'd kind of like kneel down before the game started, and I kind of like go over some thoughts in my head and try to calm myself down and like give yourself a little pep talk. And I remember telling myself thinking that you're probably not the best player or most gifted player on this field, but you've worked the hardest, and therefore tonight you're going to be the best player on this field. And that's kind of the attitude that I had, is I felt like I was so prepared that no matter who I faced or who I was going up against, that I was more prepared for them, and therefore more prepared than them. And therefore I was going to be more successful that night than they were. So I guess that's the biggest attitude that my parents instilled in me, was that, hey, you don't have to be the most physically gifted. You don't have to be the best over the course of 162 games. You just got to be the best tonight, or you got to think you're the best or the most prepared tonight.
I think this is the first time. So we call these fan submitted questions letters from the lunch pail. I think that's the first time it actually got an answer with a real lunch pail. So I know Coach Foster is going to love that one.
Yes.
Our guy Isaac says, I still remember when they brought David out in the peak of his career to do the "Let's Go Hokies" chant at a game, and I was so shocked and couldn't believe he was there. What a moment. Isaac says, who is David Wright's favorite Hokie of all time?
Good question. Joe Saunders was there with me, a Hokie. My favorite Hokie of all time. I mean, the easy answer for me, looking back on it, would be David Wilson, just because of the connection. Tyrod Taylor comes to mind. Those are probably the two that I enjoyed watching the most and getting a chance to meet and talk a little shop with.
So, David, I thank you so much for the time. Just wanted to give you a chance. So you're not on social media.
I am not
really at all. You don't really do it.
I'm old. You're like, you guys are turning 30. You said 30 for me. 30 for me was 12 years ago. It's like, I don't know. I'm feeling old. I feel like I'm looking old. I'm starting to get some gray hairs.
No, you're not. There's gray hair on that head. After that massive, I was trying to figure out a way to bring in the massive helmet joke that you wore in one of those games. Maybe that had something to do with it. But just curious, like
my neck problems came from that. The thing was so big and heavy that it strained my neck a little bit.
If people wanted to keep up with you or get involved in any of the organizations or things that you're doing, where is the best place to do it? Where can we find you? Where can we keep up with the awesome work that you're doing in New York and beyond?
I mean, I would say that the biggest thing for me and my baby right now is the Battle of the Badges game. We haven't set a date for it for 2025, but really, really cool night, meaningful night. And at least for me, coming from a family with my father being a first responder means that much more to me. And any chance we get to support the true heroes in the community, in this case, the police department, the fire department, any other first responder, I'm all in. So if we could get that stadium rocking, fill up Citi Field for a good cause, that's number one.
We will make sure to link that in our article and on social. David, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. We need to win some games with you in Blacksburg. That is our priority. So we will hope to see you in Blacksburg soon, and would love to see you at the tailgate. Let us know next time you're in town.
Yes, let's do it. And, let's do this again sometime. That was fun to talk a little mixture of Hokies Mets. So let's go Hokies. Let's go Mets.
We got to get David Wilson on here next time. He'll do a backflip. What are you going to do? What are you going to do,
I'm
David?
not doing a backflip. I might not get up. If I try to do a backflip, I'm not getting up. So,
David Wright, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me.